to IELTS on Air. In my previous video, I talked about the psychological side of the test and how to deal with exam stress and concentration problems. Please watch that video if you haven't already, and if you believe you're mentally ready to focus on the academic side of the test, let's continue our series with the question types you may encounter in the IELTS speaking exam and how to produce good answers. Let's briefly remember certain details about the first part. Here, you'll be asked up to 10 questions. As you know, the very first questions are always about the place of living, work or study. This part is like a warm-up for the rest of the test. Some example questions are as follows. Do you live in a city or the countryside? Do you like where you live? Do you work or are you a student? Do you like your job? What kind of job would you like to do in the future? This initial part should not take more than 2 minutes, so the examiner will stop you if you give very long answers. In general, in the first part, you need to find a balance. Your answers shouldn't be too short or overly long, so give appropriately long answers. After the initial part, the examiner will then choose 2 topics and will ask you questions about them. The following questions can come from various topics such as going to the cinema, your favorite meals, studying, or holidays. Let's see some examples. What is your favorite holiday place? How often do you go to the cinema? What kind of books do you like to read? What things did you like to eat when you were younger? Would you like to learn to play a musical instrument? Do you think it's important for people to play a musical instrument? Is healthy eating important to you? Can you remember a time when you were not allowed to use a mobile phone? As you can see, some questions are simple and easy to understand, while some of them may require more attention on the first part. During the exam, when the examiner says, "Let's talk about blah blah," please pay attention to that because this will give you an idea about the content of the questions and you will have a better understanding of the context. As I said earlier, you can ask the examiner if you don't understand a word, and he can also ask her to repeat the question, but remember, she's only allowed to repeat once. Now, let's produce some sample answers for these questions. What is your favorite holiday place? Well, I was in blah 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 last month. I really like to be in nature. As I live in a big city and work in a chaotic environment, I just want to have some peaceful moments with my family on holiday. I therefore prefer to stay away from popular holiday destinations, which are crowded and expensive. What kind of books do you like to read? Unfortunately, I cannot make time for reading as much as I want to. Well, when I'm on holiday, I usually read self-help books. I like reading to learn about certain things as I'm a highly curious individual with different interests. I'm not a big fan of fiction. To me, it's a waste of time to read about other people's imagination. I feel like novels do not add anything to my life. Can you remember a time when you were not allowed to use a mobile phone? Well, let me think. Not in my personal life, but at work, we're expected to use our phones only during our breaks. which makes it a bit hard for me to stay in touch with my friends. But on the other hand, I'm aware that having constant notifications from our social media accounts may distract us while working, so I obey the rules and keep my phone on silent mode all the time. So I kept the answers a bit long here on purpose as I wanted to show you how to extend the answers. So these were just some examples. You can also write your own example answers and practice your pronunciation with that. Some of you asked if it's good to prepare sample answers and memorize them. Yes, this can be a good way to study, but during the exam, you need to keep it natural, because the examiner will understand if your speech lacks the features of spontaneous speech. And another indication of a memorized answer is irrelevance. So how? For example, the candidate is not answering the question that is being asked, but still provides very long answers which usually don't make any sense. Also, the language skills can be inconsistent, meaning in the memorized parts of the speech, there is some less common vocabulary and complex sentence structures, but as it is not possible to memorize an entire speech, in the parts where the candidate produces the language, the level is remarkably lower. Let's see the example for a memorized answer. Where do you live? In a city or the countryside? I live in Istanbul, which is situated between Europe and Asia. There are many places to see and visit. Is there something you don't like about where you live? Yes, so expensive, so much people and so much traffic. Where would you like to live in the future? I don't know. A small city can be. As you can see here in this conversation, the language level of the candidate is inconsistent and obviously the first answer is memorized. So what happens if a candidate always gives memorized answers and if it's clear that the structures used in the memorized part do not really reflect his or her language level? So these parts will not be taken into account during the assessment. You can sure memorize things and try to integrate them into your speech, but the things you memorize should be in line with your level and should sound natural. Let's continue with the second part, which is a monologue where you are given a task card. You have 1 minute for preparation and you need to talk for 2 minutes. Let's see the example task. Describe a book you have read and would like to read again. You should say what kind of book it is, what the book is about, why you liked it, and explain why you like to read it again. So first of all, how to begin the conversation. I'll show you 2 options, but first, what not to do. I wouldn't recommend. Thank you for this opportunity. Today I would like to talk about, as this sounds too formal. I highly recommend. Well, I have read several books so far, but the one I read before I had my first child left a big impact on me. Or another option can be like, well, I can't say I'm a bookworm, but I try to read as much as I can. The book I want to talk about is actually a gift from a friend of mine. I'm not sure if I would buy a book with such a controversial topic. So as you can see, these sound more natural. Now you can continue answering the questions in the task and you don't have to follow the order. Well, I read several books so far, but the one I read before I had my first child left a big impact on me. The book was about parenting and family bonds and the importance of the first 7 years of a child. I'm afraid I don't remember the name of the book, nor do I remember the author, but it was written by a doctor. It was a self-help book which was intended for new parents, but mothers in particular. However, my husband also enjoyed reading it, and we both found it quite useful. Actually, we made a few changes to our plans after reading the book. I was hoping to get back to work after having the baby in 8 months, but according to the author, who performed extensive research on the topic, babies should not be left at a daycare so soon. And mothers should take care of their babies for the first 2 years. And they should, of course, be supported by their husband during that time. And the book says if mothers really need to work, they should consider working from home. The book explains the miracles of breast milk and the importance of breastfeeding for the health of both mothers and babies. There were also some useful advice on how a nursing mother should eat. One thing that I didn't like about the book is that the language was very heavy and there were a lot of words that only professionals can understand. That this was the only negative thing I can think of. Well, I actually would like to read the book again because we are considering having another baby. I may need to refresh my memory of certain things. As you can see in the sample, all the questions are answered. So let's highlight some important points about the IELTS speaking part 2. If you cannot think of a book, then talk about a movie topic as if it is a book. You can talk about 2 things. Please do not stop when you run out of things to say. Just continue with another book you have read. In the second part of the test, you're asked to describe, so please learn adjectives as we mainly use adjectives when describing things. Make sure you answer all the questions as many candidates tend to skip the very last question at the bottom that says explain. After you answer all the questions in the task, you can add additional details. Just like I did in the example earlier, I added the negative side of the book. Be ready to talk about certain topics, as in the IELTS speaking part, questions about books, movies, cities, gifts, animals, foods, celebrations, and so on are quite common. I will make another video on how to be ready for certain topics, so please subscribe if you haven't already and turn on your notifications not to miss on my weekly videos. Let's continue with the third part of the test, which is linked to the second part. So if you're asked about a movie that you like in the second part, the main theme in the third part will be about movies, but this time you'll be asked to discuss things in general. The third part, in my opinion, is the hardest as the questions being asked in this part tend to be more complex and include more higher level of vocabulary. The examiner here will increase the difficulty according to your level. It is most of the time clear from the beginning whether you're a high level or low level. But in the third part, the examiner will determine precisely how high you are or how low you are. She will try to distinguish between 6.5 and 7 or 5.5 and 5 by paying attention to certain skills you show in this part, which is why I give a lot of importance to improving one's skills on discussing abstract topics. Here, with a good discussion, you can increase your score at least half a point. So, what to do in this part to get a good score? First, please pay attention to the question. For example, what kind of books are popular in your country? The people in my country don't read. They always watch television. I always read sci-fi fiction as I have an interest in futuristic topics. Well, it's hard to know the most popular type, but from my observation, people just go and check the bestseller list and choose the one that is recommended by the bookstore. I think these days self-help books are quite popular, but in the past people used to read novels more. Now, these were some sample answers. Now, let's analyze them in detail. The first answer is very common. The question is very basic and clear, but still, many people cannot answer such an easy question properly. Well, even a country where reading is not so popular, there are still some people who like reading. So the question is about these individuals who read in your country and the popular kinds of books among them. When you give such a negative answer, you're blocking yourself, as it is not so easy to extend this answer when you begin with an argument like this. The second answer seems like coming from a high level of candidate, but still, this isn't the correct approach, as here the answer is too personal, and the question is not again properly answered. So the ideal answers here are the third and the fourth, as the candidates in these answers give their opinion without personalizing the discussion. Let's see another example question. Which age group do you think reads more? Well, if you're asking about reading for pleasure, then I would say retired people who are in their 60s, as they have plenty of time. And as for reading to learn or study, I believe those who are under 30. This includes students and new graduates who are in the beginning of their career. Well, I don't know. How can I know about everyone? Old people cannot read because their eyes aren't well. Well, when I was a child, I read more often, and now I only read when I have to. I have ADHD. I cannot focus easily. So in these sample answers, the first answer is obviously the best option. But what is wrong with the other three? The candidate who gave the second answer does not know how to speculate. Here, of course, nobody is expecting you to know about the exact data on who reads more. IELTS is not aiming to assess your knowledge of a topic, although having some information or experience would be really helpful as you can produce more ideas. However, it is not essential. Here, in the third part, you require to speculate. Just guess using your own judgment. The candidate who gave the third answer does not know how to express his opinions well, and this is mainly a language-related problem. A candidate with a better level of English would say, well, as many adults in their older ages experience problems relating to their eyes and vision, I do not think they read as much as younger adults. And the fourth answer again is personal and irrelevant. Let's continue with another example. Do you think people will read more or less in the future? I believe reading will always be an important part of human life. How we read may change, and the types of things we read may change with time, but we will always read, that is for sure. So you said the way we read and the kinds of things people read may change. How? Can you tell me a bit more about this? Sure, I think it already began with the introduction of Kindles and e-books. Today we don't need to buy physical books, which is quite advantageous for people who move frequently or for those who don't have enough space in their flat. And as I said earlier, the types of things we read will change because nobody has time for those long, thick novels today. People's attention span is quite short and they get bored easily, so the authors, in my opinion, will find new ways to keep people interested. So here I try to create an ideal discussion for the third part. The main question is answered, but the examiner asked for more elaboration and the candidate provided more details. Please pay attention how the candidate discusses his opinions in general without personalizing it, and how he is speculating even though he does not have any evidence. Let's increase the difficulty a bit. See the example question. Which do you think is more important to a country? Having famous authors or famous actors and singers? Well, it is hard to decide. Both groups are equally important to a country, in my opinion. I'm aware that literature is losing its importance today due to popular culture, which is mainly represented by actors and singers, and most recently by some social media influencers. However, a country can benefit from having all kinds of creative people, no doubt. So here it seems like the question is asking you to pick a side, but what it actually wants you to do is to compare the importance of authors and actors and singers to a country. Here, the candidate did not pick a side and gave a more neutral answer, which is perfectly acceptable. So, dear friends, try to understand the aim of the questions in the third part. Are you being asked to identify something, or to speculate on something, or to compare two things, or if your opinion is required? I will continue making videos on the question types. Please stay tuned. So dear friends, I hope you'll find this video useful. If you have any questions about the IELTS speaking exam, please write in the comments. You may also see my other videos where I give unique information on the speaking part of the test. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.